Hey guys, what's up? Chimp here with another quick market update. And the last one I recorded, Bitcoin is around 121. Since then, we had dipped all the way to 117 at the end of the US session close, and we're sort of sitting at 118 or so right now. So, to me, I just wanted to go over a couple new indicators that are sort of popping up, go over some of the older ones that we went over, and go from there. So, one of the indicators I like to look at is some of these deader, like basically fossil coins that pump. And I noticed Tezos basically going mega vertical. And the last time I did that was sort of, I guess it had an initial leg and it had a secondary leg, sort of like late November, early December of last year. And it also did the same thing early March. And in both those cases, you basically got like an altcoin cycle top within a week or two. And in both those cases, like Bitcoin ended up rising for a little while. Obviously, in the November, December case, like Bitcoin actually ended up rising all the way. Like I think alts basically, like when you look at alts as a whole, like they topped before Bitcoin did in some sense. And in March, they sort of everything sort of just topped at once. And in some cases, like some alts actually did well even after the Bitcoin initial top. And so yeah, we're seeing the same thing again, like Tezos going vertical, up like 100% in like a day or two. It's not just Tezos, right? You have other dinos as well. You can see the exact same sort of fractal pattern. Like the last few times Litecoin sort of like Litecoin will basically do this thing where it ranges, doesn't do much, and then it just has like a mega vertical move. Same thing here, like ranges doesn't do much, mega vertical move. Um, Similar pattern here, not doing much. Now it's finally kind of having this vertical move. Again, last time we did that was like late Feb, early March, and late November, early December. And again, in both cases, that was sort of like when the altcoin cycle sort of topped. And so we're seeing something similar. Can alts like this keep going? Like, yeah, it's definitely possible. Like, could Litecoin do something like this, and then that's sort of the vertical move, and then that's the top? Yeah, for sure. But again, it's just like showing you that there's, for lack of a better word, like you're now having the dinos pumping, right? Like anytime you have these dinos pumping, I feel like it's a major caution flag. Like it doesn't tell you that we're going to pull back tomorrow, but again, like you really have to think about the breadth of this rally, and that's something I like to think about a lot. Like to hold up, and I say this in a lot of my videos, if it was just a Bitcoin rally or if it was Bitcoin and a few select alts like Hype or whatever, I could, or like ETH BTC, I could say like, hey, it's actually like a pretty healthy market. But when you look at the market and everything is pumping, right? And it's not that everything's pumping and then it's like pulling back and resetting totally. No, like everything's pumping and it might pull back a little bit. Like XRP pulled back from 265 to what, like 240? Or, sorry, 365 to like 343 or whatever. You know, everything is maintaining elevated prices. It's not just Bitcoin. So you have a lot of speculative capital, like very clearly in the market. And again, to me, that's like a major caution sign. And dinos to me are like basically zero people are using these layers, zero people are touching this stuff. And it's like kind of like at the, I wouldn't say tail end of the risk curve, but it's like shit people only buy when times are really good, right? And typically when times are really good, it's when everything's like very good and everything's up only, like historically speaking, like it's hard to continue to project that in the future. And so like maybe I'm not wording this the best, but basically you only get shit like this that pumps when things are very frothy, in my opinion. And again, we'll see whether it's right or wrong, but just another sort of caution flag that you can add to the list of caution flags that have been popping up. Um, One other thing, again, I sort of refrain from having an opinion on something like the NASDAQ, but the way I like to view something like the NASDAQ is when it's up only for an extended period of time, if it sort of sneezes, it's like the lack of a NASDAQ pullback creates fragility in the crypto markets. Maybe that's the best way of putting it. So in our case, the NASDAQ's been up only for 3-4 months, right? April to July. What is that, 3 months? So it's been up only for about 3 months. No pullbacks, nothing. Like, I don't know when the NASDAQ's going to pull back. Maybe it goes to 28,000 or something next. I don't know. But like the fact that we haven't had that, because in some ways, like when the NASDAQ pulls back after a long period of not pulling back, that is like a psychological trigger in the minds of people who weren't used to looking at that signal, right? So when the NASDAQ's constantly pulling back, like for example, in April of this year, like keep getting these pullbacks, and people say like at some point you run out of marginal sellers, right? Because there might be some marginal sellers that like the first time it pulls back, or you get these big tariff news, etc. Like a lot of people flood out, and you saw that actually like at the lows, right? Like we made slightly lower lows, but when the Nasdaq basically collapsed from 20,000 to 16,000, like a minus 20% move, like Bitcoin only made a new low by like $2,000, like 2 or 3%. So people were already sort of ingrained in like, oh, stocks are weak, sell crypto, etc. Like once that's ingrained in people's minds, stocks going down like doesn't lead to fragility in crypto markets as much, because they have like the marginal people who would have acted on that signal have already acted. But because that signal has sort of not presented itself in 3 months, I don't know if that signal will present itself, but that fragility is present as a result of that signal not having presented itself. Third thing, global open interest. I don't remember what it was last video. I want to say it was like right near the highs. It peaked actually at 100 billion, I guess. But I want to say it was like 97, 98 billion. Again, still at 96.3. Like we had a pullback. Open interest reset a little bit, but it's just up only, right? Like leverage is up only in this market. And there's some unit bias here, right? Like if XRP goes up 20%, it's not because like an open interest goes up 25% on XRP. Like you can explain actually a majority of it from just the units that are already open, but that's not the case here, right? Like it's clearly more than that. And so again, like leverage is building in the system. For now, everything is sort of like up only and whatnot. And this might not be relevant now, actually, but this is something to consider if we ultimately do sort of top with alts. Is something I noticed in December, Jan, Feb. I don't know if it'll load. Is actually like every time open interest sort of got near the highs, that was like a local top for Bitcoin and alts. And so let's see ultimately like what the sort of like point of the high is on open interest before we get like a big pullback. And I think that'll be a good sort of barometer. Like again, here we go. Let's see if it'll load. Coinalyze is like notoriously slow. You had a peak, and every time you sort of got near that peak, like every time you had a big impulse up, started getting these like lower highs. But basically, like you match it up to where Bitcoin was, it was probably a good time to sell. So I just highlighted it there. So let's see where it ultimately tops out at. In general, like a rise this sharp, and we did have a rise this sharp, basically in November, December from like 42 billion to 90 billion. But in my opinion, a rise this sharp is like a caution signal. And by the way, look at what happened at the lows. Like a lot of this open interest came right back out. And this was one of the reasons I was bullish, because like you basically had no one leveraged. And in this case, now everyone's re-leveraging, right? So, and this goes to my last point before I sort of like give the counter arguments here, which is you have people saying now that the golden bull run's starting, everything's about to go up only, everything's about to go parabolic, and certainly like that might be the case for one or two assets. Like for example, I think ETH could continue to run for quite a while, but like Bitcoin's up 10x off its lows. Global open interest is now at 100 billion, right? Like 100 billion is not chump change. Like the gains were already made, right? Like what's your realistic target? Like let's say you're like as bullish as it can be, like 200k, 400k. Like you're expecting a 4x, like you already missed the 10x, right? Like so this notion that like now is the time, like it's sort of this Minsky cycle thing I talked about last time. Now is the time to get like now's the time to target outsized returns. Like you should have been targeting outsized returns in 2023 and 20, like really at the end of 2022, right? Like, and I made this point then. I said whether you like buying Bitcoin at 20K is objectively cheap. Buying Bitcoin at 17K is objectively cheap. Like buying Bitcoin at 22K is objectively cheap. And whether you bought at 22, 20, or 17, or even if you bought like at 30, right, when Luna collapsed, like it was objectively cheap, right? You want to buy these things when they're objectively cheap, and you might have to endure like a lot of pain. But that's when you want to buy. That's how you sort of generate these outsized returns. You don't generate outsized returns by, applying leverage once everything's up only. Okay, so 2 counterpoints I want to go over, and I'm going to call it a wrap on this video. First one, funding rates. They have reset, so I don't think it's as much of a signal as it was before. I think when these things sort of stay elevated or stay sort of negative for an extended period of time, it does give you a signal. But in this case, like they have reset, so if you're like someone who's like, hey, like this trend is not anywhere near ending, you probably want to look for something like this to sort of hop back on the train. Now, I don't think that's the case. Like I think there's a lot of risk here, but sort of just giving the counter narrative. And lastly, which is IBIT has just been continuously flowing like hundreds of millions of dollars a day into crypto. And so, look, if this continues, obviously indefinitely, like this is clearly bullish, right? My bet is at some point things are going to stop. It might coincide with something like stocks pulling back or whatever, but I think at some point this is going to stop. And I think that you could get reflexivity in reverse, which is why I don't put too much weight into something like this. But I think like the IBIT flows in particular, like if you had a crystal ball, and I don't think anyone does, I don't even know if BlackRock does, that said 30 days from now IBIT flows are going to be plus 10 billion, you probably just have to get long. And if you had a crystal ball that told you in 30 days from now IBIT flows are -5 or -10 billion, like you probably just have to get short. And so ultimately, like this is a major driver in the market. Like this is sort of like one of the key drivers of the price action in Bitcoin. So it's something to keep an eye on, and it's something I'm gonna, say research more into, but see if I can get any sort of further edge. I mean, probably not. Probably this is an indicator that's you can only look backwards, and there's nothing you can really do in terms of extrapolating forwards. But yeah, this is probably one of those like if you had a crystal ball, this is the one variable you sort of choose to see. I think that's about it for now. Just wanted to record a quick update here, and yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave a comment below. Happy to answer them. If you have any topics you want me to go over, also leave a comment below. And until next time, take care, guys.